Looking back, I can pinpoint the exact moment everything changed. Not the day I left, but 3 years earlier, standing in my own living room holding a tray of coffee for my wife's book club. "Oh, Gerald has opinions about everything," Denise said, her laugh practiced and sharp. "But you know accountants. Always counting, never creating." The women laughed. No one looked at me. I'd been invisible for years, but that night, something broke inside. They say revenge is best served cold. I served mine frozen. My wife spent 20 years erasing me, so I became a ghost. No fight, no note. By morning, I was gone. Left her the house, the cars, everything. She thought she'd won. Then she tried to sell. That's when she learned I'd been planning for 3 years. The ground beneath her feet, still mine. My name is Gerald Kramer. I'm 45 years old, and I used to believe being steady was enough. I worked as chief accountant at Riverside Manufacturing for 22 years. Steady paycheck, steady benefits. Steady, reliable Gerald who handled numbers while other men got credit. I met Denise at a fundraiser when I was 23. She was studying education, confident in ways I wasn't. We married within a year. Had Asher 2 years later, Amelia 3 years after that. I built us a good life. 3-bedroom house, 2 paid-off cars, college funds I contributed to without fail. But steady became boring. Reliable became invisible. About 5 years ago, the pattern started. Denise made decisions without asking. She refinanced our house, bought a new car, signed Asher up for a $4,000 SAT course. When I questioned it, she'd sigh like I was being difficult. "Gerald, I don't have time to explain every detail. Some of us are actually living life, not tracking it in spreadsheets." The kids heard it. Asher started talking to me the same way at 15. Dismissive, like my input was something to tolerate. Even Amelia learned to go to her mother first for everything that mattered. I tried talking to Denise one night. Told her I felt disrespected, like we'd lost something. She looked genuinely confused. "Gerald, you're my husband. Of course I respect you, but you're not exactly exciting. Maybe take some initiative instead of waiting for permission." So I took initiative, just not the kind she expected. I started researching corporate structures, Delaware LLCs, asset protection strategies. I worked at a manufacturing company, but manufacturing runs on numbers, supply chains, vendor contracts. I saw how companies move money through subsidiaries, protected assets and trusts that looked simple but were layered like puzzles. I opened a business account under an LLC I registered in Delaware. Called it Ashmere Holdings, after the kids' initials. Put $1,000 in from a bonus Denise didn't know about. Then I did it again. Different names, different states. Always small amounts. Always under reporting thresholds. Always legal. By the time I planned my exit, I had 6 entities. None connected to my name. All managed through registered agents and P.O. boxes. 3 years building infrastructure for a life Denise would never see coming. The kids were the hardest part. Asher, 17, looking at colleges. Amelia, 14, still needing her father. I told myself I was teaching them that dignity matters. That a man doesn't accept being diminished. But I knew the truth. I'd spent 22 years being the man everyone ignored. I wanted to see what happened if I became the man no one could find. 3 months before I left, I started final preparations. Transferred the house deed into Denise's name with a clause she'd signed 2 years earlier, buried in refinancing papers. Same with the cars, the joint accounts. On paper, she owned everything. In reality, I owned the ground beneath her feet. The night before I left, I watched Asher sleep, then Amelia. Memorized their faces. This wasn't abandonment, I told myself. It was strategy. And when morning came, I'd be gone. The coffee was still warm when Denise realized something was wrong. I know this because I'd set the timer before I left. 5:47 a.m. The pot would finish brewing at 6:15, right when she usually came downstairs. A small courtesy, maybe, or maybe I wanted her to know I'd thought of everything. I was 300 miles away by then, driving a 12-year-old Honda Civic I'd bought 6 months earlier with cash. Registered under one of my LLCs. No connection to Gerald Kramer whatsoever. My phone, the one she knew, sat in a dumpster behind a rest stop in Pennsylvania. The new one, a basic flip phone, sat in my cup holder. Only 2 numbers programmed in. My lawyer's office and an encrypted messaging service I'd set up for the kids when they eventually figured things out. If they figured things out. The plan was simple. I'd spent 3 years building it, testing every angle, every possible crack in the structure. Last night, I'd executed the final pieces. At 2:47 a.m., I'd signed the last documents. Property transfers, vehicle titles, account authorizations. All done digitally through secure portals. All time-stamped and notarized through services Denise didn't know existed. By 3:30, I cleared my side of the closet. Not packed, cleared. Everything I needed fit in 2 duffel bags. Clothes, documents, a laptop with encrypted files. The rest, I donated to a shelter drop box on my way out of town. I didn't leave a note. What would I say? Sorry for disappearing, but you made me invisible first? Sorry for taking control of my own life. Sorry for refusing to spend another 20 years apologizing for existing? No. Silence was cleaner. I'd rented a room above a hardware store in a town I'd visited once, 3 years ago, specifically because I'd never mentioned it to anyone. The owner, Carl, was 72 and didn't care about much beyond whether rent came on time. Need it for how long? Carl had asked when I called. Indefinitely, I'd said. Cash, first and last month, no questions. He'd agreed immediately. The room was small. 1 window, a hot plate, a bathroom with a shower that probably hadn't been updated since 1987. Perfect. I wasn't here to be comfortable. I was here to rebuild. My phone buzzed. The new one. A notification from an alert I'd set up on Denise's email. She just logged in, probably checking bank accounts, trying to figure out what happened. She'd find everything in her name. House, cars, checking account. She'd feel confused, maybe even victorious for a moment. Look, she'd think, he finally did something right. Then she'd try to refinance, or sell, or make any major decision with those assets. That's when she'd discover the contingency clauses. The ones buried in documents she'd signed 2 years ago, bored and distracted, trusting me to handle the boring details. The ones that gave Ashmere Holdings, my Delaware LLC, final approval rights on any major transactions involving the property. She owned the assets. I owned the leverage. I pulled into a truck stop, ordered coffee and eggs from a waitress who didn't look at me twice. Just another middle-aged man in a wrinkled shirt, forgettable and tired. Exactly what I needed to be. I thought about Asher and Amelia. Wondered if they were awake yet. If Denise had told them I was gone, or if she was still trying to figure out herself. I'd left something for them. A trust account, accessible when they turned 21. Enough for college, for starting their lives. Instructions that I'd written carefully, explaining not what I did but why. Whether they'd understand was another question. The eggs arrived. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Around me, truckers talked about routes and weather. Normal people living normal lives. I wasn't normal anymore. I wasn't Gerald Kramer, chief accountant, invisible husband, dismissible father. I was no one. And for the first time in 22 years, that felt like freedom. Denise called my work at 7:15 a.m. I know because I'd set up a forwarding service that sent me transcripts. This is Denise Kramer, she told the receptionist. I need to speak with Gerald immediately. I'm sorry, Mrs. Kramer. Mr. Kramer submitted his resignation 3 days ago. Effective immediately. Silence. Then, that's impossible. The paperwork's all here, ma'am. Digital signature. Everything processed. She hung up. I sat in my rented room, reading the transcript. Below me, Carl argued with the supplier about lumber prices. Normal life, continuing, while mine underwent demolition. My monitoring alert buzzed. Denise had accessed our shared accounts. I watched her cursor move frantically across the family computer screen. Bank statements, property deeds, car titles. Everything showed her name as sole owner. Then she opened the mortgage details. Her cursor froze. Primary lien holder, Ashmere Holdings LLC. She Googled it. Found nothing. Delaware registration, P.O. Box, registered agent. No public presence. She called the bank, then pulled up refinancing documents from 2 years ago. The ones I prepared. The ones she'd signed while watching television. Page 17. Contingency clause. Any sale or major refinancing requires written approval from primary lien holder. She'd given me veto power over her own house. Her hand shook as she found the car titles. Same issue. Override clauses buried in DMV paperwork. 18 months of planning. Every document, every signature, every clause designed to look routine. My burner rang. Unknown number. Mr. Kramer? Professional female voice. This is Lisa from County Records. We have your wife here. She's upset about property documentation and... Wrong number. I said calmly and hung up. I powered off the phone, snapped the SIM card in half, installed a new one 3 minutes later. Below, Carl's argument ended. The store bell chimed. Someone asked about light bulbs. I closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling. Wondered if Asher and Amelia knew yet. Part of me felt guilty. The part that remembered bedtime stories and homework help. But the bigger part, the one dismissed for 20 years, felt only cold satisfaction. She'd wanted initiative. I'd given her exactly that. The hardware store became my testing ground. Carl didn't ask questions when I offered to organize his inventory. He just handed me a clipboard and wheezed about young people and computers. I was 45, but to Carl, anyone under 70 qualified as young. The store was chaos. Receipts in shoeboxes. Inventory tracked on paper sometimes. Orders based on memory. It bled money Carl couldn't see. How long you been running this? I asked one afternoon. 43 years, he said, lighting a cigarette despite his own no-smoking sign. My daddy ran it 30 before that. You making money? He laughed, wet and rattling. I pay bills. Mostly. 2 weeks later, I'd rebuilt his entire system. Digitized inventory. Found 15,000 in duplicate orders sitting unlogged in the back. Discovered 3 suppliers padding invoices for years. How'd you catch that? Carl squinted at my spreadsheet. Math. Inattention. Within a month, I'd cut operating costs 30%. He made actual profit for the first time in 5 years. You want a job? He asked one morning. I want equity. He blinked. What? You're 72. You'll retire eventually. Sell me 20% now. I'll run it. Increase profits. When you're ready, I'll buy the rest. With what money? I have resources. He studied me. You're running from something? No, I said honestly. Running towards something. There's a difference. We shook hands that afternoon. By evening, I transferred funds from one LLC. Clean money, properly documented, completely legal. Carl signed without reading carefully. Just like Denise used to. The irony wasn't lost on me. That night, I checked monitoring systems. Denise had hired a lawyer. Lexi Monroe. Young, aggressive, expensive. Good. She needs someone competent. I pulled up a document I've been drafting. A proposal for buying distressed commercial properties. Buildings abandoned, foreclosed, forgotten. I had 9 LLC structures. Enough to start acquiring assets. Enough to build something real. Gerald Kramer had been an accountant maintaining other people's systems. The man I was becoming would build his own. The letter arrived at Carl's hardware store 6 weeks after I'd bought my equity stake. Plain envelope. No return address. Inside, a single business card with embossed lettering. Theodore Vance, Financial Restructuring. When you're ready to talk. A phone number. Nothing else. I'd never heard the name before. I showed it to Carl. Vance. Carl squinted at the card. That old snake's still alive. You know him. Knew him 30 years ago. Back when my daddy ran this place. Vance was some kind of business consultant. Helped a few local shops stay afloat during the recession in the 90s. Carl handed the car back. Heard he disappeared after that. Just vanished one day. Nobody knew where. I stared at the card. The paper quality was expensive. The printing precise. That evening, I called from my burner phone. He answered on the first ring. Mr. Kramer. I was wondering when you'd reach out. How do you know my name? I know everything about you, Gerald. How you left. How you structured your exit. The LLCs, the trusts, the contingency clauses. Quite impressive for someone with no formal training in this particular art. My stomach tightened. Who are you? Someone who did exactly what you're doing. 23 years ago. His voice was calm, measured, like a professor discussing a familiar theorem. I'm 71 now. Terminal cancer. 6 months, maybe 8. I'd like to meet before I run out of time. Why? Because what you're attempting is dangerous if done incorrectly. And because I like to pass along what I learned. Consider it a dying man's hobby. We met 3 days later at a diner 40 miles from my current location. He was thin, gray, with eyes that assessed everything clinically. You're making mistakes, Vance said after we ordered coffee. Small ones, but they'll compound. Such as, your LLCs are structured well, but you're using the same registered agent for 3 of them. Pattern recognition will catch that eventually. Your monitoring systems are adequate, but you're accessing them from locations that establish a geographic pattern. In your equity purchase in the hardware store, you sign documents using a signature that's only slightly modified from your original. Handwriting analysis could connect them. I set down my coffee cup. How do you know all this? Because I've been watching. Not stalking, observing. When I heard about your case through certain channels, I recognized the methodology. It's similar to mine, but cleaner in some ways, sloppier in others. What channels? He smiled. There's a network. Informal. People who've done what we've done. We don't meet, don't communicate directly, but we watch for patterns. When someone executes an exit this precisely, word spreads. That sounds paranoid. It is. And it's kept me invisible for over 2 decades. He pulled out a folder. I'm going to give you something valuable. A corrected structure for your holdings. New registered agents, randomized access patterns, proper signature variation protocols. If you implement these changes, you'll reduce your exposure significantly. Why help me? Because I had no one to help me. I made mistakes that cost me years of stress. Nearly got caught twice. He pushed the folder across the table. And because men like us are rare. Most people who walk away do it impulsively, emotionally. They get caught within months. You planned. That deserves respect. I opened the folder. Inside were detailed diagrams, procedural recommendations, even templates for restructuring documents. There's a cost, he said, which is, when you succeed, when you've built what you're planning to build, help the next person who attempts this. Not everyone. Only those who do it for the right reasons. Not revenge, not cruelty. Survival. I studied him. What did you leave behind? A wife who spent 15 years telling me I was worthless. 2 daughters who learned to treat me the same way. I left them everything tangible and took only what mattered. My dignity and my future. He sipped his coffee. My daughters are in their 40s now. One reached out 5 years ago. We have lunch occasionally. She understands now. The other still hates me. That's her choice. Do you regret it? Never. But I regret how I did it. The mistakes I made, the close calls. You have a chance to do this correctly. That's worth something. We talked for 3 hours. He explained strategies I'd never considered, risks I hadn't anticipated, methods for building wealth invisibly. When we parted, he shook my hand. You'll face a moral test eventually. A moment where helping your old family conflicts with protecting your new life. When that happens, remember why you left. Don't let guilt make you sloppy. 6 weeks later, I received a newspaper clipping in the mail. Theodore Vance's obituary. Natural causes. No funeral services listed. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note. Implemented your changes. Die clean. Make me proud. I sat in my room that night, staring at the note, wondering if this was my future, helping ghosts stay invisible until I became one myself. Then I opened my laptop and started implementing every change he'd recommended. Denise's lawyer filed for a forensic audit 8 months after I left. I expected it sooner. Lexi Monroe was good, but she was also thorough. Thorough takes time. The audit request landed on a judge's desk with 40 pages of documentation. Denise claimed I'd hidden assets, manipulated property records, and fraudulently transferred titles. All technically true. Also all completely legal. The judge approved a limited audit. Bank accounts, property records, business filings. They'd look for hidden money, fraudulent transfers, anything actionable. They wouldn't find anything. I'd spent 9 months cleaning every trail. New registered agents for each LLC, randomized access patterns, properly documented transactions. Thanks to Vance's guidance, my structure was airtight. But the audit meant something else. Denise was escalating. And escalation meant she was desperate. I sat in Carl's hardware store, organizing inventory, while my encrypted phone buzzed. Message from Asher. Mom's drinking again. Every night. She won't talk about you, but she's falling apart. My hand stopped moving. I stared at the screen. This was the moral test Vance had warned about. The moment where old responsibilities conflicted with new survival. Denise was struggling. That much was clear. The woman who dismissed me for 20 years was now unraveling because I'd removed myself from her foundation. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction. The bigger part felt something more complicated. I typed back. Is she getting help? No. She says she's fine. But Harper found bottles hidden in her closet. Amelia, 14 years old, watching her mother self-destruct. I closed my eyes. This wasn't what I wanted. I'd wanted to escape, to rebuild, to prove I mattered, not to destroy someone else. But I also knew the truth. Denise's drinking wasn't my responsibility. I hadn't forced alcohol into her hands. I'd simply removed myself from a situation where I was being erased. Her response to that was hers to own. I typed carefully, "Tell Amelia I love her. Tell her this isn't her fault. And tell your mother that if she needs help, there are resources. But I can't be the one to provide them. She won't accept help from anyone. Then she'll have to hit bottom. That's not cruelty, Asher. That's reality. You can't save someone who won't save themselves." Long pause. Then, "You sound different." "I'm different. Is that good?" I thought about that. Was it good? I'd survived, built something, reclaimed dignity. But the cost was watching my family struggle from a distance. "I don't know yet." I typed honestly. "Ask me in 5 years." The audit results came back 3 weeks later. No evidence of fraud. All transactions properly documented. Property transfers legally executed. Denise's lawyer filed a motion to compel disclosure of LLC ownership. The judge denied it. Privacy protections for Delaware entities were absolute. She'd lost, not the marriage. The legal battle to prove I'd done something wrong. Because I hadn't. I'd just done something she never saw coming. That night, I received one final message from Asher. Mom hired a private investigator. I smiled. Not from cruelty. From respect. She was adapting. Fighting back. Becoming formidable. Good. Let her chase ghosts. Let her waste money on investigators who'd find nothing. Meanwhile, I'd keep building. Keep growing. Keep proving that Gerald Kramer, the invisible man, was never actually invisible. Just waiting for permission to exist. And now that I'd stopped waiting, I was unstoppable. The detective's name was Russell Kane. Former FBI, now private sector. Denise had hired the best. He found a hardware store in month 11. I was restocking paint supplies when he walked in. Mid-50s, gray suit, carrying himself like someone who'd spent decades reading people. "Excuse me," Kane said to Carl. "I'm looking for the owner." Carl pointed at me with his cigarette. "That'd be him. Owns 20% anyway." Kane's eyes locked on mine. Professional assessment. He pulled out a phone, glanced at a photo, then back at me. "You look different," Kane said. "But the bone structure matches." "Gerald Kramer." I set down the paint can slowly. Met his eyes directly. "I don't know who that is." "Your wife hired me to find you." "I don't have a wife." Kane smiled slightly. "You're good. The name change, the LLC structures, the clean exit. Professional level work. But you made one mistake." "Which was?" "You kept the same mannerisms. The way you organize inventory, stack items by size and color. Your wife mentioned you did that at home obsessively. Most people can't change those patterns." I wiped my hands on my work pants. "Even if I was this Gerald person, what would you do about it? I'm not wanted for anything. No warrants, no debts, no crimes." "No," Kane agreed. "But your wife wants to talk. Says there are things that need to be settled. Then she can settle them with a judge. That's what lawyers are for. She's struggling. Your kids are struggling. You know that, right? If they are, that's unfortunate. But I'm not responsible for other people's choices." Kane studied me for a long moment. "You really believe that?" "I believe that I spent 22 years being responsible for everyone else's happiness. It never occurred to anyone to be responsible for mine. So yes, I believe people need to handle their own struggles. Even your children." That hit harder. I kept my expression neutral. "Especially children. They need to learn that life isn't fair and people aren't reliable. Better to learn early." Kane pulled out a business card. Set it on the counter between us. "When you're ready to have a real conversation, call this number. Not for your wife. For your kids. They deserve better than wondering if their father is dead or just doesn't care." He walked out. I stared at the card for a long time. Carl shuffled over, looked at it, then at me. "That true? You got kids?" Carl asked. "Had kids. Different life. They know you're alive. They know. They know why you left. Not the full story. Someday maybe." Carl lit another cigarette. "My boy stopped talking to me when he was 23. Thought I was too hard on him. Too demanding. Didn't speak for 11 years. Then one day he showed up here. Said he understood why I pushed him. Said thank you. What changed? He had kids of his own. Realized parenting isn't about being liked. It's about preparing them for a world that doesn't care about their feelings." I picked up Kane's card. Did that make losing 11 years worth it? No. but it made the 11 years less painful. That night, I sat in my room and wrote a letter. Not to Denise, to Asher and Amelia. I explained everything. Why I left, how I planned it, what I was building. I explained that their mother wasn't a villain, just someone who'd forgotten how to see me as human. And I explained that leaving wasn't abandonment. It was survival. I sealed the letter, addressed it to my attorney with instructions, deliver when they turned 21. Then I went back to work. 2 years after I left, I owned controlling interest in 4 businesses. The hardware store was thriving. Carl had retired fully, sold me his remaining shares. I'd expanded the operation, added an online ordering system, started wholesale distribution to contractors. I bought a small manufacturing facility that produced custom cabinets. Hired Eddie, the day laborer who'd asked about my business philosophy. Made him operations manager. I'd invested in a commercial property development on the edge of town. 6 units, all leased to local businesses at reasonable rates. And I'd started a consulting firm, helping small businesses restructure their finances, avoid bankruptcy, optimize operations. Word spread quickly. I had more clients than I could handle. None of it under my original name. I was Eli Hayes now. Different social security number. Purchased legally through a complicated process involving name change laws and identity restoration services. Everything documented. Everything clean. Gerald Kramer existed only in court records and old tax returns. The consulting work brought me into contact with people who were where I'd been. Trapped in situations they'd built themselves into. Marriages where they'd become furniture. Jobs where they'd become expendable. I helped them see options they couldn't imagine. You're telling me to leave my wife? One client asked, a man named Robert who'd been dismissed for 15 years. I'm telling you to evaluate whether staying serves any purpose beyond avoiding discomfort. If it does, stay. If it doesn't, plan your exit carefully. That's cold. No. Cold is spending your life diminished. Strategic is choosing differently. Not everyone took the advice. Most didn't. They'd go home, try to fix things, convince themselves it would get better. A few did listen. A few did plan. A few did leave. And I'd help them structure their exits properly. Legally. Cleanly. I never told them my story. But I think they sensed it. Recognized something in how I talked about dignity and survival. One evening, my encrypted phone buzzed. Message from Asher. Got into Cornell. Full ride. Thanks for the trust fund. Mom says I should reject it on principle. I'm not that stupid. I smiled. Typed back. Congratulations. Make it count. Will you visit? That was a question I'd been avoiding. Could I attend his graduation? His orientation? Any moment where I'd be physically present in his life again? Not yet. But someday. When I've built enough that I can stand in front of you as someone you'd respect. Not the man who left. The man who survived and created something meaningful. Long pause. Then, I already respect you. I understand why you did it. I stared at that message for 10 minutes. Felt something unfamiliar. Not pride. Relief. Thank you. I typed. That means more than you know. Amelia's message came 3 days later. Asher told me about Cornell. I'm happy for him. Mom's not drinking anymore. She got help. Started therapy. She asks about you sometimes. Not angry. Just curious. Progress. Not reconciliation, but progress. I'd spent 2 years building a life. For businesses. New identity. Financial stability. But reading Amelia's message, I realized I'd also built something else. Distance from the guilt that had followed me those first months. I wasn't the villain in this story. Neither was Denise. We were 2 people who'd failed each other completely. And I'd chosen survival over slow destruction. That wasn't heroism. But it wasn't cowardice either. It was just a choice I'd made. And I'd live with it. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 4 years after I'd left. Asher's voice was tight. Dad, Mom's in the hospital. Heart attack. She's stable, but the doctors say she needs surgery. Expensive surgery. My coffee went cold in my hand. Insurance. Doesn't cover all of it. She'll need about $80,000 out of pocket. She doesn't have it. The house, the cars, the accounts I'd left her. For years. And she'd burned through everything trying to prove she didn't need me. What does she want from me? Nothing. She doesn't know I'm calling. But Harper's scared, and I thought you should know. I sat in my office above the hardware store, staring at spreadsheets showing healthy profit margins. I had the money, could wire it anonymously, cover everything, disappear again. Vance's words echoed. Don't let guilt make you sloppy. But this wasn't guilt. This was something else. A final debt. Not to Denise, but to the man I used to be. The one who'd promised to honor commitments, even when those commitments stopped being honored in return. I'll handle it, I said. Dad, she can't know it's from you. She'd refuse. She won't know. I made 3 calls. Contacted the hospital billing department through one of my LLCs. Arranged an anonymous payment through a medical charity fund I'd established 2 years earlier for exactly these situations. The payment went through that afternoon, marked as grant assistance from the Foundation for Medical Relief. Denise would never know. Asher texted that evening. Surgery scheduled. They said a charity covered it. Was that you? Does it matter? Yeah, it does. Then yes. But she doesn't need to know. Let her think she got lucky. Why help her after everything? Because I left to survive, not to watch her die. There's a difference. 3 days later, Denise's surgery went perfectly. She recovered in a private room I'd also paid for anonymously. Harper sent me a photo. Her mother sleeping peacefully, tubes and monitors surrounding her, alive. I stared at that photo for a long time. The woman I'd spent 22 years with. The woman who'd made me invisible. The woman I'd left behind. I didn't love her anymore. Didn't miss her. But I didn't hate her either. She was just part of a life I'd moved beyond. And helping her survive that life felt like closing the final door properly. Not slamming it, just closing it with dignity. 5 years after I disappeared, Asher graduated from Cornell. I stood at the back of the ceremony, wearing sunglasses and a hat, completely anonymous among thousands of parents. Watched him walk across the stage, shake hands with the dean, accept his diploma in engineering. Denise sat in the family section with Amelia and her parents. She looked healthier now, recovered from the surgery, moved on with her life. Good for her. After the ceremony, I waited by my truck. Asher found me easily. We planned this. You came, he said I would. We stood awkwardly for a moment. Then he hugged me. Hard. Thank you, he whispered. For everything. The trust fund, the surgery money, all of it. You earned the education part. The surgery was just common decency. He pulled back, studying me. You look different. More solid. Like you actually exist now. I do exist. Just differently than before. Will you meet Amelia? She's 19 now. Finishing community college. She asks about you constantly. Someday. When she's ready to understand the full story. She already understands. Mom told her everything last year. During recovery. Said she'd been unfair to you. That she'd taken you for granted. That surprised me. Denise said that. Therapy does wonders apparently. She's different now. Softer. She even asked if I'd seen you. What did you tell her? That you're alive and well. That you built something meaningful. That you're not the villain she thought you were. We talked for another hour. About his job offers, his future plans, his relationship with his mother and sister. Normal father-son conversation. When we parted, he asked one final question. Do you regret it? Any of it? I thought carefully. I regret the pain it caused you and Amelia. I don't regret surviving. Those two things can both be true. He nodded. That's fair. I drove back to my town, to my businesses, to my life. The life I'd built from nothing. Gerald Kramer was legally dead. Declared so 2 years earlier. But Eli Hayes was very much alive. Thriving. Building. Creating value. I'd started with 6 LLCs and a dream of dignity. Now I own 9 businesses, employed 73 people, and helped dozens of others restructure their lives. Not bad for a ghost. That evening, I sat in my apartment and wrote one final letter. To Amelia. Explaining everything I couldn't say in person yet. Telling her I loved her, that I was proud of her, that my leaving was never about her. I sealed it, addressed it, and put it in my safe. She'd get it when she was ready, when she asked to see me. Until then, I'd keep building, keep proving that the invisible man had always been worth seeing. And maybe someday, I'd be ready to be seen again. But for now, being alive was enough.